Hi, welcome to Prolifeic, the show that's a little bit serious, a little bit quirky, and a whole lot pro-life. Today we're going to be talking about the 5 things that pro-choicers think they know about us pro-lifers, but really don't. In other words, the 5 ridiculous stereotypes that pro-choicers have, which are complete fabrications. Hallelujah! Hallelujah! Myth number 1 is that pro-lifers are motivated purely by religion and all they want to do is shove their religious beliefs down your throat, and that's why they're pro-life, that's why they're opposed to abortion. This myth is utter rubbish. According to the latest census data, in the United States alone now there are more than 6 million secular pro-lifers. That is pro-lifers who have no religious affiliation whatsoever but are staunchly committed to the pro-life cause. Why? Because being pro-life is not about religion. Being pro-life is about human rights and social justice. It's about this sort of common understanding that we all have as human beings, that it is never okay to deliberately cause harm to another innocent human person. And abortion obviously causes harm to another innocent human person, therefore it's a grave act of injustice. That's why we're pro-life. Being pro-life is not about accepting some religious document or about some tenet or article of faith. Instead, it's about accepting human rights and accepting the fact that every single human being has the right to be treated justly and equitably in our society, and abortion doesn't do that, so of course no person of goodwill could ever support it. Myth number 2 is that pro-lifers are scientifically illiterate about life in the womb. This one is an absolute doozy, because I can tell you right now, it is the pro-lifers and not the pro-choicers who have a much stronger and clearer grasp about fetal development and life in the womb. You will not hear a pro-lifer referring to a 13-week-old fetus as a clump of tissue or a blob of cells, because they know that that is a woefully inaccurate description, a totally scientifically inaccurate descriptor of what life in the womb is like at that stage. By 13 weeks you have limbs, you have a beating heart, you have a brain that is developing. It is absolute nonsense to use terms such as clump of cells or blob of tissue, yet these are the very labels that pro-choicers use all the time. Far from being illiterate about science, generally speaking, pro-lifers have a far better grasp of fetal development and the science of life in the womb than what pro-choicers do. It's precisely why so many of us are pro-life, because when you look at the science of fetal development in a dispassionate and honest way, you can see quite clearly that what grows in the womb is a living human being that deserves human rights and respect. Myth number 3 is that pro-lifers are woman haters. You hear this statement thrown around all the time, particularly by the more ardent members of the pro-choice, usually feminist lobby, who accuse us pro-lifers of being woman haters just because we are opposed to the act of abortion. Well, like the other myths, nothing could be further from the truth. You see, it's not pro-choicers but pro-lifers who are actually running crisis pregnancy centres for women who find themselves facing unplanned or difficult pregnancies and need support and help and care and financial assistance. You don't see pro-choicers doing that. You see lots of pro-lifers doing that. You see pro-lifers opening their homes up to women, actually putting their money where their mouth is and saying, hey, we will look after you and care for you because we realise you need that support in order to choose life for your baby. The other thing that you won't hear pro-lifers doing is you won't ever hear a pro-lifer trying to deny the reality of the hurt that abortion can cause to women. You won't hear pro-lifers saying that post-abortion pain or psychological trauma or emotional hurt isn't real. Yet you hear a lot of pro-choicers trying to deny that reality. That's hardly a pro-woman position, especially if you've spent time talking to women who have actually been hurt and wounded by their abortion experience. It becomes rather cruel, really, when you think about the way that many pro-choicers talk about post-abortion hurt and basically all but suggest that these women who have been hurt by abortion are either deluded or lying about the pain and the experiences that they have had. The other thing you won't ever hear a pro-lifer doing is trying to justify or excuse the act of gendercide. That is the act of aborting a human being before they are born based on their gender, and 99% of the time it is females who are targeted by gendercide abortions. Yet you have pro-choicers who actively try and defend this and claim that it is legitimate to choose to eliminate a human being just because they are a female. How can that ever be reconciled with the supposed commitment to women and the supposed pro-woman position that the pro-choicers apparently hold? Far from being anti-human rights, pro-lifers actually have a far more consistent commitment to human rights than what pro-choicers do, because we say, and we are firmly committed to the idea, that every single human being is entitled to the fundamental human right to life, no matter what their age is or no matter where they happen to be residing or developing right now. We don't make distinctions. We don't say human rights are only for big humans, human rights are only for some human beings and not for others. We say everyone, by virtue of the fact that they are human beings, should be entitled to and should have their human rights respected. Myth number 5 is this ridiculous stereotype that all pro-lifers are just angry terrorists who are waiting to blow up the local abortion clinic. Yep, there have been some fringe nut jobs who have tried to attach themselves to the pro-life movement, but they are by far and away a very, 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 very tiny minority, and they are condemned by the pro-life movement. As a movement, we support non-violent, peaceful and loving opposition to abortion. We do not condone or participate in the bombing of abortion clinics or the targeting of other human persons. That would not be consistent if we did that, so we just don't do that. And if you want to talk about insane people who do heinous things when it comes to the abortion debate, neither side has the monopoly on that kind of crazy. There are plenty of examples we could point to where pro-choicers have committed violent, unjustified and even criminal acts in the name of their pro-abortion ideology. This is not just a problem that exists within the pro-life camp. And of course, it's an absolute fallacy to try and suggest that the whole pro-life movement should be wholesale written off purely because of the actions of a tiny, tiny minority who do not represent the authentic heart of the pro-life movement and who are acting in a way that is completely contrary to the core principles of what it is to be pro-life. If we were going to say that that fringe minority who do crazy things is enough of a justification to write off the whole movement, then we'd have to say that the civil rights movement is in real trouble. Why? Because they also had a fringe minority who did crazy and criminal things. We'd also have to say that the anti-slavery movement is in real trouble because they had their fringe minority who did crazy and violent things too. None of the members of this very tiny fringe minority are actually representative of the authentic heart of their movements, and therefore to try and treat them as the norm is just a myth. It's a false stereotype, yet for some reason people who seemingly are quite literate and quite intelligent continue to perpetuate this really dumb myth. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Prolifeic. I've just got one more quick myth to finish with. Myth number 6, this episode is going to keep going forever and ever. It's false, completely untrue. This episode is actually about to end right now.